Hello everyone and welcome to this 8 lectures of the optimization for machine learning class. And today we will talk about the Frank-Wolf algorithm. So today's lecture we will describe an alternative algorithm to minimize a smooth and convex function over a compact set in convex. And this is the Frank-Wolf algorithm, also known under the name of conditional gradient, which was introduced by Frank and Wolf in 1956. And the main difference of the Frank-Wolf algorithm with a projected gradient descent is that it does not require any projection step. And since this projection step can be computationally expensive for some geometry of a convex set X, then in some example we will see today, the Frank-Wolf algorithm can be more efficient. So first, let me remind you what we're interested about when we are considering constraint optimization. So we want to minimize a function f, which is often considered as a convex, and today it will be also smooth. And so we want to minimize this function under the constraint that x remains in some convex set, capital X. So that's a classical constraint optimization problem. And so we see here like the geometry picture of this problem. We have here like a parabola, so the function f, for example, it will be quadratic. And what we want to find the point x which belongs to capital X, such that f of x is as small as possible. And here the problem is a bit kind of well defined, because we see that the minimum of f will be obtained here for some point x star which already belong to the set capital X. But for some other example, the global minimum of f won't belong to capital X, and so x star will be, the definition will be the argmin of f of x for x belonging to x. Okay, and we see here the same problem with the contour line with the level set of the function. And so what we want is really to find the point where the function is smaller, but with the constraint that x belongs to x. And what we will consider today is a Frank-Wolf algorithm. And so the Frank-Wolf algorithm really updates one sequence xt. So at each step, you will compute the vector s, which will be defined as the LMO of the gradient of f evaluated in xt, where we will define LMO in very soon. And then you are updating xt in xt plus 1 by doing a convex combination of xt and s. Okay. And so the weight of this convex combination, gamma, will be the time step, and often it will be varying with the time. And so classically, we assume that gamma is of order 2 over t plus 2. And so we will see also in the following slides that there are other ways to set the step size. And so what is the principal element of this Frank-Wolf algorithm? It is what we call the linear minimization oracle, so the LMO. And so the LMO of G is just the argmin of S scalar product with G when S belongs to the set X. So really in Frank-Wolf, you make a step in the steepest direction as a gradient descent algorithm, but here you make a step in the steepest direction given the constraint set X. So we see here in the following illustration where we still have our function f, and where we have at some point x, we have the gradient. And what we will look is that we will look at the direction s, which will minimize the scalar product between s and this gradient. And so we see that this will often be obtained at some corner of the constraint set X, at some extreme point. So this is a clear, this is really like the clear picture about the Frank-Wolf algorithm. At each step, we consider the gradient. And then we will look at the point which minimizes the scalar product between this gradient in the convex set X. And this will give you what is called the linear minimization oracle, we denote by LMO of G. And then you will update your point xt plus 1 as a convex combination of the previous point xt and this linear minimization oracle. And as I already said, really, what is important about the Frank-Wolf algorithm is that you are making a step in the steepest direction, but given the constraint set X. So what are the properties of this algorithm? The first property is that all the iterate xt will be feasible. And so you can easily show that by induction, since you already have that x0, x1 to xt are feasible, and that by definition, you see that S belong to X. So you are doing a convex combination between S and xt. So this convex combination will still belong to the set X because X is convex. And so xt plus 1 will also belong to X, and so will be also feasible. So by doing the Frank-Wolf algorithm, you have that all the iterate x0 to xt are belonging to the set X. And the main inspiration of this algorithm is really to reduce nonlinear optimization to linear optimization, because you start from a nonlinear problem where you want to minimize your function f of the convex set capital X. And to do so, you will iteratively solve some linear problem, which are the linear minimization oracle. So at each step of the algorithm, you are solving this linear subproblem, and so you really reduce nonlinear optimization to linear optimization. And what is very important and the main advantage on projected gradient descent is that you are replacing the projection step by a linear optimization problem over the constraint set X. And in some case, this linear subproblem can be really easier to solve than a projection step, which requires to minimize a quadratic function. So the Frank-Wolf algorithm is really the projection-free, and this has to be this then sharp contrast with the projected gradient descent, which require to do a projection at each step. And the last very important property of this algorithm is that it will produce some sparse iterates. Because since the iterates are convex combination of the previous point and the point S, it means that in fact, xt will be a convex combination of all the S you have computed so far. And so at the end, the iterate will be a convex combination of only a few corners of the constraint set X. And this is because at most only one new extreme point is added at each step. And this really enables to have some sparse and some low-rank solution. And this is a property which will be very useful for machine learning application. And so in terms of history, this algorithm was first introduced and analyzed in 1956 by Marguerite Frank and Philippe Wolf. And it was first introduced for polyhedral domain X, which was given as an intersection of linear constraints such that the linear minimization oracle is only like a linear programming and is very easy to solve. But it was also independently developed in Russia by Leventin and Polyak in 1966. So by Leventin and Polyak. And under a different name, under the name of the conditional gradient algorithm. And since it was the time of the Cold War, they were not aware that it was developed before by Frank and Wolf, and also Frank and Wolf. And I mean, there were two lines of literature which was disjoint. So now we will see some example where we can use this algorithm. And one of these examples will be the lasso regression, where you want to minimize the least square error with the constraint that the x is belonging to the L1 norm. So you want to minimize for x the square norm of ax minus b such that the L1 norm of x is smaller than 1. And since you know that the L1 bound is a convex hull of the unit basis vector EI, the LMO will be easy to solve. So we know that x, which are the points such that the one norm of x is smaller than 1, is exactly the convex hull of plus or minus the basis vector. So we also can easily compute the gradient of this function. So the gradient of f of x is equal to A transpose times AX minus B. And so then we will see that we can easily get the LMO. So by definition, the LMO will be we want to compute the mean of S times G for norm of S1 smaller than 1. And so since this is equal to sum of Si Gi, this is always larger as minus the sum of the absolute value of Si Gi. And so this is always larger than the max of the Gi minus times the sum of the Si. And since we assume that S is of L1 norm smaller than 1, this is always larger than minus max of the Gi. And then you see that if for S you take minus the sign of the Gi EI, where I is equal to the argmax of the Gi, then you directly get that Sg will be exactly minus absolute value Gi, and so you are reaching the minimizer. So you see that the LMO is very simple to compute. You just have to look at your gradient. You find the indices I such that absolute value of Gi is the largest. And then you can compute the LMO of G as the negative sign of Gi times the unit vector EI. So this is a very simple oracle, and its complexity is of order D. And I don't know if you remember, but in the third lecture, Martin presented you an algorithm and the complexity of doing a projection step onto the L1 ball. So we were getting also a complexity of order D, but the algorithm was very complicated. So we see in that example that the LMO for the L1 ball is really simpler than the projection onto the L1 ball. Another additional advantage, as we previously said, is that it will produce some sparse iterate. because at each iteration, we are only adding one new non-zero coordinate to X. So the sparsity of xt will be at most t, and if we are in very large dimension and the number of iterations we are doing is smaller than d, then we have a very sparse vector. And so that will be very important, and this is something you will not directly obtain with projected gradient descent. Okay, so this example, what is important with lasso regression is that it gives you an example where first the linear minimization oracle is very easy to compute and is really simpler than the projection step. So for this algorithm, Frank-Wolf will be simpler to implement, and it will just be simpler to implement the projected gradient descent, and also you will get some sparse iterate. So another main advantage of the Frank-Wolf algorithm will be the link with the duality gap. So the duality gap we define g of x. It will be exactly the scalar product between x minus s, where s is the LMO of the gradient of f of x. So s is equal to LMO. So g of x is equal to the scalar product between x minus s and the gradient of f in x. And this duality gap directly gives you a certificate for the optimization quality, because by definition, we know that g of x is equal to the max of scalar product between x minus s times the gradient of f in x for every s in capital X. And by definition of the max, this will be larger than the value obtained when you take s is equal to x star. So this will be larger than x minus x star times gradient of f of x. Since x star belongs to capital X, and by convexity, we know that the scalar product is always larger than f of x minus f of x star. So we easily see that g of x is always larger than f of x minus f of x star. And so this means that the linearization of the function, the linearization f of x plus s minus x gradient of f of x, always lie below the graph of the function. And so what is very nice is that this duality gap is giving you a certificate for the current approximation quality. And why f of x star is often unknown for a lot of interesting problems, you can easily compute g of x. For example, in the duality gap will be automatically computed at every iteration of the Frank-Wolf algorithm. And so then you will be able to use the certificate as a stopping criterion for the algorithm, or in order to check for some numerical stability. And so you exactly see that on these figures, where you have like the function f, you have the value f of x here, and what you will look is that the value g of x will be exactly this distance between the scalar product between the gradient and the vector s minus x. So this is giving you this distance. And you see that this distance will be always larger than the distance between f of x minus f of x star. Okay, so what is very nice with the Frank-Wolf algorithm is that you get for free a duality gap at each step, which will help you to control the convergence. So now let's see how we can set the different step size. So first we can take the value of 2 over t plus 2. So this value is proportional to 1 over t, and the exact constant is given in order to work well in the proof. But you can also do some line search. So you can pick the best point on the line segment between the current iterate and S. So you can take gamma such that f of xt is minimized. And this is a 1D problem. So this requires an additional optimization problem, but this additional optimization problem is only in 1 dimension, so it is not difficult to solve, and you do not have to solve it exactly. And so for this step size, you will get the same theoretical convergence rate, but often in practice, it could lead to better convergence behavior. Another approach is to do a step size which is based on the gap. So gamma t will be the minimum between 1 and g of xt divided by L times the distance between S and xt squared. And so we will see in the following slides the motivation of the step size, but this is also, we will also be able to show the same convergence rate, but with sometimes maybe some better performance in practice. So we have these 3 different step size variants, and we will be able to prove convergence rate for all of them. So what are the convergence rates we are able to prove for the Frog-Wolf algorithm? So we see that we have a convergence in 1 over epsilon step. So in order to reach epsilon accuracy, you will need to do 1 over epsilon steps. So the theorem is the following. Take f a function from R power d to R, which is convex and smooth with a parameter of smoothness L, and start from an arbitrary point x0 belonging to capital X. Then choosing any of the above step size, the Frog-Wolf algorithm yields f of xt minus f of x star will be smaller than 2 times the smoothness constant times the diameter of x squared divided by t plus 1, where the diameter of x is defined as the maximum of the distance between 2 points in x. So it's really like the size of the set x. So we see that we have a convergence of order L over T. And this is the same as PGD. What is nice is that the step size is independent of the smoothness constant, so in some sense adaptive to this. But we also see that this convergence is suboptimal compared to accelerated gradient descent, which have a convergence rate of L over T squared. And this is still a very important open problem to know if it is possible to find an algorithm which will only use a linear minimization oracle, but which still obtain a convergence rate of 1 over T squared for some convex and smooth problem. Okay? But the main conclusion is that the Frog-Wolf algorithm for minimizing a smooth and convex function over a constrained convex set X obtain a convergence rate of order 1 over T, which is the same as the one obtained by projectile gradient descent without requiring doing any projection. So we will prove this convergence result. And to prove this convergence result, we will first need a lemma. So we will define by xt plus 1 to be any convex combination between xt and s. And what we will see is that if we denote by s the LMO of the gradient f evaluated in xt, then it would be possible to show this following inequality, which is that f of xt plus 1 will be smaller than f of xt minus g of xt plus gamma square over 2 times L times the diameter of x squared. So the proof is not too complicated. We will write x to be xt, y to be xt plus 1, which would be the convex combination between X and S. And first, we would use the definition of the smoothness of X. So we have that f of y is equal by definition f of x plus gamma s minus x. And using the smoothness, this will be smaller than f of x plus gradient of f of x times s minus x with a step size plus L over 2 times gamma square, the square norm of s minus x. And since both s and x belong to the set x, this distance, s minus x squared, this will be smaller than the diameter of x squared. So we directly obtain that f of y is smaller than f of x plus gamma s minus x times the gradient plus gamma square over 2 times L times the diameter of x squared. And then, using the definition of the duality gap, we directly obtain the result. Okay, because this is exactly what we have denoted by g of x. Okay, and what is important with this inequality is that it will hold for any step size gamma between 0 and 1. And this is what we will use now. So from the lemma, we know that for every step of Frank-Wolf, it holds that f of xt plus 1 will be smaller than f of xt minus gamma g of xt plus gamma square c. If we choose gamma to be 2 over t plus 2, and we denote by c is equal to 1 over 2 times L times the diameter of x squared. What is important is that these bounds will also hold for the line search and the gap-based methods. So for the line search methods is not too difficult because we know that xt plus 1, f of xt plus 1 line search, this is equal to the mean of f of xt plus gamma s minus x for gamma between 0 and 1. And so this will be smaller than f of x plus gamma t, where gamma t is equal to 2 over t plus 2 s minus x, which is this f of xt plus 1. So we see that we directly have that for the line search, we will also have this inequality. For the gap-based technique, it's not also very difficult. It's just that for the gap-based step size will be the step size which will minimize this inequality. So you can do the computation. If you take the gamma, which will minimize this quadratic function, you will obtain the gap-based step size. And so the value of this will be smaller than the value you will obtain for gamma is equal to 2 over t plus 2. And then you can bound s minus x by diameter of x, and you will directly get that f of xt plus 1 gap-based is also smaller than f of xt minus gamma g of xt plus gamma square c, where gamma is this time varying step size. Okay? So what is important is that for the three methods, we have that f of xt, the value of the function in the next iterate, will be upper bounded by f of xt minus gamma g of xt plus gamma square c, where gamma is the step size 2 over t plus 2. And so now, by writing h of x is equal to f of x minus f of x star, so the increment, we will directly see that h of x t plus 1 will be smaller than h of xt minus gamma g of xt plus gamma square c. This is just subtracting f of x star in the left and in the right hand side. And then by definition of the gap, we know that g of xt is larger than h of xt. So we get that we can upper bound this by h of xt minus gamma h of xt plus gamma square c. And so then we get that this is equal to 1 minus gamma times h of xt plus gamma square c. Okay, well, we have used the certificate property of the duality gap that h of x is smaller than g of x. And then we can conclude by doing induction. So this is exercise 1 of the lab 9. We will do it right now. Okay, so we are assuming that, so let's call ht is equal to h of xt, and let's assume that h0 will be smaller than 2c. And we also assume that ht plus 1 will be smaller than 1 minus gamma ht plus gamma square c for gamma, which is equal to 2 over t plus 2. And we want to prove that ht is smaller than 4c over t plus 2. Okay, and we will do this by induction. So let's compute. We have ht plus 1, which is smaller than 1 minus 2 over t plus 2 times ht plus 2 over t plus 2 square mc. So now we will use the induction hypothesis, which is one that ht is smaller than 4c over t plus 2. And so this is a smaller than 4c over t plus 2 times 1 minus 1 over t plus 2. Okay, so this is exactly equal to 4c over t plus 2 times t plus 1 over t plus 2. And this would be smaller than 4c, t plus 2 over t plus 3, which is equal to 4c over t plus 3, what we wanted to prove. And so why? We are using that t plus 1 over t plus 2 is smaller than t plus 2 over t plus 3. And this is because if you compute t plus 2 squared minus t plus 3 times t plus 1, this is exactly equal to t power 2 plus 4t plus 4 minus t power 2 minus 4t minus 3. So this is equal to 1, and so this is larger than 0. Okay? So we see that by an easy induction, we can prove that ht plus 1 is smaller than 4c over t plus 3, and this directly leads to the result we want. So now we will see an important property of the Frank-Wolf algorithm, which is that this algorithm is affine invariant. And so in fact, all the convergence analysis relies on the measure of the nonlinearity of the function f over the domain set x. And this is a curvature constant, C of f, defined as a sup for x and s belonging to S for any gamma between 0 and 1, and for y denoted as x plus gamma s minus x. This would be the sup of 2 over gamma squared times f of y minus f of x minus y minus x times the gradient of f of x. So we see that for linear function, this will be equal to 0. For quadratic function, C of f is equal to the square Euclidean diameter. You can do the computation. And so the intuition is that imagine you are moving from a current point x towards the next iterate y, which is equal to x plus gamma s minus x. And so a bounded CF means that the deviation of f of y from the linearization of f at x is bounded, where the deviation is weighted by the inverse of the step size gamma. And what is very important is that the Frank-Wolf algorithm and also C of f is invariant under affine transformation. So if we choose a reparametrization of the domain X by a surjective linear or an affine map M, so imagine that we have M from the previous x hat to x, and then we will define all the optimization problem, which is minimi f of x for x in x. And we also have the new optimization problem under the reparametrization, mean of f hat of x hat for x hat in x hat. Then the two problems are exactly the same. And what is important is that for Frank-Wolf, every iteration will remain the same, and CF also will be invariant. And this is because you can do the computation, but what is important is the gradient of f hat is exactly equal to m transpose the gradient of f. This is will show you that C of f hat is exactly equal to C of f. Okay, so you see that the Frank-Wolf algorithm and the curvature constant are invariant under affine transformation. So this is the same as what we obtained for Newton, but for a first order algorithm under a constraint problem. And this is also in sharp contrast with the gradient descent, which is not affine invariant. And so what is nice is that in fact all the proof can be done again, but not with C of f, I mean not with L diameter of x squared, but you can replace this by C of f. Okay, so at this point, another point is that for any norm, you can prove you have this upper bound that C of f is smaller than L, the smoothness constant, times the square diameter of x, but then it could be for any norm, not only the Euclidean norm. The only thing is that you should use the same norm to constrain the geometry of the set X and to compute the smoothness property of the function. Okay. And so this affine invariant is something very nice about Frank-Wolf we don't have for gradient descent. So now we will look at the convergence result we can obtain for the duality gap. So if we take still a function f from Rd to R, which would be convex and smooth with a parameter L of smoothness, and we start from any starting point x0 belonging to the convex set X. Let's assume that capital T, the number of iterations, is larger than 2. Then for any of the above step size, the Frank-Wolf algorithm will lead iterate T for T between 1 and capital T, the number of iterations, such that the gap evaluated in xt will be small. So such that g of xt will be smaller than 27 over 4 times the curvature constant over t plus 1. So here we could also have, if you prefer, not the curvature constant, but L times the diameter of x square over t plus 1. So you see that this is not the same t here than here, which means that it's not possible to prove that for every t, g of xt will be smaller than 1 over t. What you can prove is that it will exist one indices t smaller than capital T, such that the gap evaluated in g of xt will be small. So this is a weaker result than the convergence result we get for the primal iterate, but it is still very useful. So let me recall you that what we can only prove for the duality gap is that it exists one iterate xt such that the gap in xt, g of xt, is smaller than some constant over the total number of iterations, t plus 1. And so the proof is that not all the gap can be small. And so we will use the lemma again. So let's see how we can do the proof. So we will use some notation. As before, we will say that hk is equal to h of xk, and gk will be equal to g of xk. And what we know from the previous results we have already upper bound hk. So we know that hk is smaller than c over k plus 2. Okay, where c is equal to 2cf. So this is what we have shown previously in the lecture. And so the main argument of the proof will be that it will be possible to show that the last third of the iterate won't have a too large gap. So how we will do that? We will suppose that for all the last third of the iterate, gk will stay larger than some value. And then we will be able to derive a contradiction. Okay? So let's denote d is equal to k plus 2. This would be simpler to write. And what we are assuming that g of xk is strictly, so gk is strictly larger than some constant beta c over d. And for which k? For any k larger than upper value of mu d minus 2 and capital K. Okay, the last iteration. Okay, so we assume that for the last portion of the iterate, then the gap is strictly larger than some constant times c over d. And so we will be able to derive some contradiction for some nice choice of beta and mu. So by using the previous lemma, we have used in the proof of the primal iterate, what we can show is that we can show that hk plus 1 will be smaller or equal than hk minus gamma gk plus gamma square over 2 times CF. And so if I replace the value of gamma and the value of CF by C, I will get that this is smaller than HK minus 2 over K plus 2 GK plus 2 over K plus 2 square. Okay, I don't have... So I directly replace. So this would give me C over K plus 2 square, where I have used that C is equal to 2 CF. And now I will use that my assumption that the duality gap is large. And since GK is strictly larger than beta C, then HK plus 1 will be strictly smaller than HK minus two K plus 2 times beta C over D plus C over K plus 2 squared. Okay? And why? Is because since the duality gap is still large. Okay, so this is why we go from a superior or equal inequality to a strict inequality here. And this will be very important in the following. And so now what we will use is that in our last third of the step, gamma will be not too large and will be not too small. So let's see what we mean by that. We mean that if I denote by k min the value, upper value of mu d minus 2, then for every k between k min and k, I can upper bound and I can lower bound k plus 2. So I can show that mu d will be larger than k plus 2, and this will be smaller than d. Okay? So this really comes from the definition of K-min. So now it is possible to use this bound to replace the value of k here and k here. And so what I will get that hk plus 1 will be strictly smaller than hk minus 2 over d times beta c, and then I will lower bound 1 minus k plus 2 by 1 over d. Okay, because k plus 2 is smaller than d. So minus 1 over k plus 2 will be smaller than minus 1 over d. And then I will use the lower bound mu d is smaller than k plus 2 to upper bound c over k plus 2 square by c over mu d squared. And so this gives me that hk plus 1 is strictly smaller than hk minus 2 beta c minus c over mu square divided by d square. So this is the main result we have. For every k between k min and k, we have hk plus 1 is strictly smaller than hk minus some constant, where the constant is equal to 2 beta c minus c divided by mu square over d square. Okay, so this is what we have proven so far. And now we will do the sum of all this inequality. So we do the sum for k is equal to k min to k. And so how many terms there will be in the sum? So there will be k minus k min plus 1. So this will be equal to k minus upper value of mu d minus 2 plus 1. So this will be larger than 1 minus mu d. And we will denote this value by n. Okay? So when I do the sum, I will get that hk plus 1, so it's strictly smaller than hk minus my constant. So I'll call it delta. Okay, delta is equal to 2 beta c minus c over mu square divided by d square. So this means then that this will be smaller than hk minus 1 minus 2 delta, smaller than hk minus 2 minus 3 delta, and so and so. And so at the end, you will get smaller than hk min minus n delta, because k minus k min plus 1 is smaller than n. And now what we will use is that we have a result on h of k min. So what we have proven is that h of k min, this is smaller than c over k min plus 2. And so this is smaller than c over mu d. Okay? So what we get is that hk plus 1 is smaller than c over mu d minus n times my constant. What is my constant is n times 2 beta c minus c over mu square divided by d square. And so this is equal to, I can factorize c over mu d times 1 minus n times 2 mu beta minus 1 over mu. This is divided by d. Okay? So this is the main result, what we have proven. We have proven that hk plus 1 is strictly smaller than c over mu d times 1 minus n 2 mu beta minus 1 over mu divided by d. Okay. And so we will get a contradiction because we will see that if we take mu is equal to 2 over 3 and beta is equal to 27 over 8, then 1 minus n times 2 mu beta minus 1 over mu divided by d, you can do the computation, this will be equal to 0. And so therefore, so that's what do we have? We have that hk plus 1 is strictly smaller than this. Times C mu d. Okay. So what we get is that hk plus 1 is strictly smaller than 0, and this is a contradiction because we know that sk plus 1 is equal to h of xk. This is equal to f of xk plus 1 minus f of x star. And so this is super equal to 0. Okay, so this is not possible because we get that the xk, which is super equal to 0, is strictly negative, and so this is a contradiction. So that means that one of the assumptions we have made so far was wrong, and so the main assumption was to assume that g of xk was strictly larger than beta c, and so what we know is that it exists a k0 between k min and k such that g of k0 is smaller or equal to beta c over d. Okay, so this is giving you the result. So let's see again the proof. We wanted to prove that it was existing one iterate such that the gap in this iterate was smaller than was small. And so what we did, we first assumed that all the gap for the last third of the iterate were strictly larger than some quantity, BC over D. Using this assumption, we were able to derive some inequality, which were leading at the end that the increment hk plus 1 was strictly negative. And we know that it is not possible because xk plus 1 is superior or equal to 0. So there was a contradiction somewhere. And so this implies that it exists a k0 between k min and k, such that the gap in k0 is smaller than beta c over d. And this is exactly what we want. Because I remind you that d is equal to k plus 2. So this proves you the result for the gap. And let me recall you that the result we obtain for the gap is weaker than the one we obtain for the primal convergence because we only obtain one iterate xk with a small gap. We don't have a small gap for all the iterate. Okay, so now let's see some extension and some use case of the Frank-Wolf algorithm. So how can you extend this algorithm? So first, in a lot of application, it will not be possible to exactly compute the LMO. Because even if it's only a linear optimization problem, then it can be hard to solve for some complex constraint set X. And so maybe you will only be able to solve it up to some additive or multiplicative accuracy. So for example, imagine that you find S such that S times the gradient is smaller than the mean for all the S in X plus some additive term 1 over 2 delta gamma square CF. So then you will be able to show the convergence, exactly the same convergence for the algorithm, but up to accuracy delta. So at the end, you will pay the delta. But if delta is small, then you will still get a good convergence rate. And you can do exactly the same if you have some multiplicative error. Okay, so approximate the LMO can be useful if solving the linear subproblem is difficult. It can also be useful if you have some inexact gradient information. So if you don't exactly compute the gradient, but you have some noise on the gradient, then you can put this noise into the delta. And if the level of the noise is small, at the end you will still get some convergence rate. Then you can also consider some randomized LMO. And so if the subproblem is solved in expectation, then the result will also hold in expectation. Okay, and then you can also consider extension of a Frank-Wolf to some unconstrained problem, and then it is related to the matching pursuits literature, which was kind of popular in the signal processing. But what is important is what are like the use case when you want to use the Frank-Wolf algorithm. And so really you want to use it whenever the projection step is more costly than solving a linear problem. Okay, if the projection step is expensive, then Frank-Wolf will be more efficient than projected gradient descent. So some application could be the lasso or other problem with the L1 constraint, but also some matrix completion where the Frank-Wolf will give you some scalable algorithm, and also a lot of problem coming from combinatorial, such as the matchings, network flow, and so on. So, where you want to minimize over some complex polytope. And often when your convex constraint is a polytope, the projection can be very expensive, but you can easily solve some linear problem on it. Okay. So really like the punchline of the course about Frank-Wolf is that you want to use it when the projection will be more costly than solving a linear problem. And so let's conclude by some application. And so often the set X will be defined as a convex Earl of some subset A of atoms. Okay, and so we will sum up all the different examples and how we can compute the LMO for this example. So the first one was the L1 ball. So that's all the X such that norm of X1 is smaller or equal to 1. And the set of atoms is exactly plus or minus the basis vector. And we have seen that we have 2 times D of atoms. And we have also seen that the complexity of computing every LMO was of order D, and that the LMO was given by plus or minus EI, where the I was corresponding to the largest GI in eigenvalue. We also have the problem of the simplex, which is all the X, such that Xi is positive and sum of Xi is equal to 1. And so for the simplex is a convex whole of all the unit vector. Then this is a set of D atoms, and still the complexity of computing the LMO is still of order D, because you just take the unit vector which corresponds to the argmin of the GI. Okay, but here you don't take the absolute value around G. Then we can also extend it to any norms, any LP norms. So where we assume the L1, the LP ball, so the X such that the P norm is smaller than 1. And so for that, using the Holder inequality, we know that S times G will be smaller than norm P of S norm Q of X, norm Q of G, where Q is the Holder conjugate of P. And this you will be able to solve this for every, so you will be able to solve it by taking Si to be proportional to Gi power Q minus 1. This will give you the result, and keeping the same sign. Okay, so here for the LP ball, when P is different than 1, you see that the number of atoms is equal to infinity, but still it's still possible to solve the LMO easily. And we can also consider Frank-Wolf to do some optimization over some matrix. So for example, we can consider the nuclear norm. So the nuclear norm of a matrix, let me remind you. This is the sum of the singular value of the matrix. And we can consider the set of atoms. We can take A to be the set of the rank 1 matrix. So this will be set of the U V transpose such that U is equal to 2 and norm de V2 is equal to 1. So norm the U is equal to 1 and norm de V is equal to 1. And so then the LMO will correspond to find the principal eigenvalue. And you can do this without doing a full SVD, but you can do this with using some power method or some long-sum method, which are accelerated power method, and the complexity will also be linear. So you see that you can also use some Frank-Wolf algorithm in order to do some optimization over the matrix. And then it's also possible to easily and efficiently implement the LMO. So if you want to have more details about all the application, you can read the paper by Martin Yagi about Frank-Wolf, and you have a lot of very interesting examples where you can use this algorithm, and a lot of examples where you have some closed form or where the LMO can be efficiently solved. So let's conclude this lecture on Frank-Wolf. Next week, we will study the coordinate descent. And before wishing you a very good weekend, let me just recap what we have seen so far. So today we were considering the optimization of a smooth and a convex function over convex and compact set X. And we have introduced the Frank-Wolf algorithm. And the main advantage and difference between Frank-Wolf and the projected gradient descent algorithm is that at each step you are not computing any projection, you are only minimizing a linear function. So it is simpler to implement in a lot of cases. And you get the same rate of convergence as for projected gradient descent, but with a lot of additional benefits. So the first one, as I already told you, is that you don't have to do any projection, so it's simpler to implement, but also you will get some sparse iterates, because at each step, the next iterate will be a convex combination of the previous iterate and one of the atom of the convex set X. So you get some sparse iterate, and you have a lot of application in machine learning for that. And also, you are getting for free a duality gap, which you are able to compute at each iteration, and which will upper bound the distance between f of xt and f of x star. And for this duality gap, it is possible to prove theoretically that if you are doing t-step of Frank-Wolf, it will exist one iterate, x t0, such that the duality gap in this x t0 will be smaller than 1 over t. So then you have a lot of modification of Frank-Wolf. You can consider a different step size, the theoretical step size of 2 over t plus 2, but also a step size by doing some line search, or some step size where you will use the value of the duality gap to compute the step size. You can also consider some problem where you will not exactly solve the LMO, but you will only approximately solve the LMO. Then you will have some additive or multiplicative error. And at the end, you will get the same convergence rate up to this error. But it will be possible to control them. And to conclude, it's very efficient to use Frank-Wolf for every problem where the projection is more expensive to compute than solving the LMO. And we have seen in this last slide a lot of this application. So you will also have an exercise session later today. If you have any questions, you can ask them on the Moodle. And I wish you a very nice weekend. See you next week.